Hello and welcome, my D&D nerds. We're back doing another Strixhaven College. This time we're doing Silverquill classrooms. So if you haven't seen my video that I've done already on running Strixhaven classrooms, I'll have a link to that in the bottom. This is kind of an extension of that, specifically to running Silverquill classrooms and kind of some of the stuff you could use. This is all content I've come up with, and I'm just trying to share with people that might find it useful. So if you enjoy it, please let me know. I'm happy to hear that stuff down below, as well as, likes, subscribes, all that good stuff. Anyways, let's get into it. So, what makes the Silverquill classroom special? Well, my imagination of these classrooms, as you can hopefully kind of tell from the art here, is this idea of these auditorium, almost more classical university, medieval building style university classroom you might expect in a D&D setting, but always with a stage at the center and like this eclectic blend of writing utensils and materials you would expect to actually write on with said writing utensils, kind of just strewn throughout with books on the walls. The room is really about performance and oration, talking, speaking, dramatic representations of things, debate, etc. That's really the kind of what the room is built around. And I imagine these rooms are relatively similar. There's probably quite a few of them, and they're probably meant to hold something like 20 to 30 students, maybe depending on how big you envision Strixhaven being as a university, something like 5 to 50 of those classrooms, just kind of depending on the scale you're expecting to be there. Okay, cool. So that's what I expect the rooms to be like. These very fixed in place stationary rooms, which are different than from some of what I kind of imagine the other classrooms being like. What are some of the things that you actually do in these classrooms? So again, if you haven't watched one of these videos before, I kind of break these out into essentially activities that the players can actually interact with, and I have 3 to 4 of them depending on the classroom. So in this case, we have a kind of an extra one here, which I'll talk about in a sec here. This learn language. So the three-ish activities I'll say that you can do in this classroom is essay writing, oration, which is just speaking, and then joining the debate team. Those are the 3 primary things you can do as a Silverquill student. Obviously, these are just these are just flavored activities that you can use to essentially associate skill checks with your classes without having to reinvent the class or what the class pertains to every time. So with the essay writing, you're essentially doing a DC 12 if you're in your first year persuasion or sleight of hand. The idea, you might say, this is weird. Why is sleight of hand a possibility for essay writing? Well, the idea is your sleight of hand in terms of basically cheating. That's the idea there, is there you got that shadow and light, that 2 sides of the coin there with Silverquill. So persuasion is kind of your natural essay writing skill, and then sleight of hand is your ability to bullshit or cheat. Um, cool. So we'll come back to what you get for graduating. We'll talk about all the rewards after I go through the 3-ish activities. Now there's this. When I say 3-ish, we have this learn a language, which is its own activity. It doesn't require a skill specifically. It's just a skill DC is based on how many languages you already know, and it's sort of inverted. It like in real life, you would imagine that it actually gets easier to learn languages as you know more. But here, just for the sake of making it more difficult as you know more languages, if you already know a bunch of languages, the DC is just 10 plus the number of languages you already know. So for most characters, this DC is going to be somewhere between 11 and 15. Um, so it's a very attainable thing. It's not meant to be difficult. It's really just a mechanism. Hey, do you want to know more languages as a player character? Here's an opportunity to do it. You can do it within the Silverquill College. I actually imagine uh, this is probably the most common thing for other students from other colleges to take in another college. Like, so if you can think of having a minor in Silverquill, you probably learn some languages in Silverquill College. Anyways, okay, so the second actual activity thing that you do is oration. Oration is just speaking. Um, and this can be performance or stealth. And again, kind of keeping this shadow and light idea, you can be a very performative speaker, talking with your hands, very focused on gesturing and body language with the audience and making eye contact, etc. Or stealth, which is this idea that you're actually kind of like underhandedly um, speaking to people and convincing them to do things, not maybe by standing on a stage, but maybe being in the audience, and kind of being that foil foil figure who's actually suggesting ideas to, and then the audience takes them and runs with them. That's kind of the idea there is you kind of have the traditional way a person orates, and then maybe a little less obvious way someone might use oration to get make things go a certain way. Instead of convincing people directly, you're sort of suggesting indirectly. That's the idea there. And again, so we have that skill DC 12 plus 2 times the year. So this is meant to be a little more difficult than this one. And then finally, we have the debate team. Now, when I wrote this one, I kind of had the idea of this could actually, you could actually change this to be uh, also like dramatic performances. I thought about that as well. I just put debate team in here because that's what I intend to do. But if you wanted to change this to be like based on um, something kind of like a more drama oriented version of the continuation of Silverquill's skills, you could do that. In my mind, though, I sort of imagine that might be more of like a it's like a where Prismari and Silverquill meet each other. It's like that's very much the art part of speaking and performance. Whereas in my mind, Silverquill, in this version of Silverquill, I'm very focused on kind of the skills of communication and writing specifically. Anyway, so the debate team is what I went with, and you have Arcana and Intimidation. So maybe this one's a little more obvious. With Arcana, you're basically using your magical prowess to enhance your ability to be very persuasive and compelling, with frills and literal magical frill, and possibly even let's just say magic that doesn't trick people. It's probably the best way of putting it. Whereas with intimidation, you may still be actually using magic, but if you're using spells in this case to make people agree with you, it's probably not the kind of magic that you would want to have cast on you. And the idea there, so you're either using some combination of your ability to subjugate or convince people through intimidation and or magic that might be helping you do that. Again, DC bumps up a little bit. We go up by 2. So in first year, this would be 16. Again, this is meant to be more difficult. Players are meant not to be discouraged from doing this, but uh, it should be harder to do it right off the bat. As you go through the years, these things become easier. The idea here being that you have to do this a bunch. You're doing this check every day. Again, watch that video if you kind of want more of the ideas of how you would run through this. There's a report card and everything that you can use in there. But they're doing these checks multiple times. It's not like you just do the check once and you're done the class. You're probably going to roll checks dozens of times depending on how you're running the campaign. Okay, cool. So what do you get for actually doing these things? So I break this down into essentially the 3 different sections. So you got the writing essays, oration, and debate. There's also the language, but you just get the language for learning language. That one I'm hoping is obvious. So you have 6, 8, and 10 successes. So not only are the DCs harder, but the actually completing the coursework gets more difficult or is increased in terms of what you need to achieve. So for the first 6 successes, you basically get to pick one of these, and you might notice that 6 is low compared to some of the other classes. Some of the other classes, this number is as high as 10, and then it goes to 12, 14, or 8, 10, and 12. So this one's lower because you really are encouraged to do this multiple times. So the idea is you could get encode thoughts, message, friends, thaumaturgy, or vicious mockery. But if you wrote more essays, say you get 6 successes, cool, bank that. Now encode thoughts. You do it 6 more times and get message. Like so, the idea is this one is more repeatable than some of the other colleges. Uh, you also you can gain access to specific cantrips if you want as well, or like basically any. So why don't I just read it? It says, in addition to gain access to above cantrips, a student gains the ability to quickly enhance these spells to any written medium with the use of a first level spell slot. So you can essentially make quick scrolls for these, which is cool. Okay. And then successful oration, you get any first, second, or third level spell that has a verbal component and a casting time of 1 action or 1 bonus action. Basically, any spell you can just do. You have access to the ability to, at the DM's discretion, learn that spell. Okay, and this is written to be extremely vague intentionally. I don't think you should be limited to your spell list. I think literally any spell that meets this criteria on any spell list should be sufficient because we're at a magical school where you learn magic. No arbitrary lists telling you what you can and cannot learn. And then, finally, 10 successful debate wins. Any fourth or fifth level spell that has both verbal and somatic. Because the idea here is now you're doing more than just talking, or you might be gesticulating or what have you, gesturing. So now you have to have spells that have both. And once you get those, you'll notice the little comment in the bottom down here. You can start using spells to make this DC go down by 4. So basically, the idea is the player is using resources to reduce the DC. Interestingly, if you've watched that original video, you'll notice that this isn't taking a tick away from the number of disadvantages you have. If that doesn't make any sense to you, that's fine. Just watch that original video. If you're not interested, just ignore what I just said. This specifically makes the check easier. It doesn't actually change your advantage disadvantage scenario. And taking 4 off is pretty significant. Basically, if you're in second year, that puts your DC down to 10, which means most people would pass it half the time, which is pretty favorable. And then, okay, so mastering skills. So one of the things you get as part of that I have in all these classes, again, if you haven't watched one of these videos, is once you succeed a term, like you pass a class. I'm not really too worried about what that means in your setting. For example, my setting characters all have 3 classes in a full term. As long as they pass one of those classes in a term, they get access to a mastery skill. And essentially, what they're doing is they get the option to dump a point, like literally 1 point of proficiency into a skill. And this college has the longest list. Most of the colleges, I think, have access to 2 or 3. Silverquill gives you access to, I think it's all 6, 7. Doesn't matter. You can count them. The idea here is like, oh, I want to bump persuasion up, intimidation, deception, stealth, sleight of hand, or arcana up. I want to be better at those things. So you bump them up. Once you get to 3, so you pass 3 classes in, you pass 3 terms, 3 classes across 3 terms. You get to +3 in something you weren't proficient in. Now you're proficient. You can do that again, get to +3 on top of your proficiency, and that gives you expertise. And then you're maxed out. Once you have expertise in a skill doing this, you cannot do it again. And if you want to read, I'm going to link all of this. So if you want to read through it in more detail, you can. And then I also give this fun tweak where you can change the base stat for the skill. The first time you put a point into any of these, you can say, hey, instead of persuasion being a charisma skill, it's going to be an intelligence skill now. And that just goes all the way down. So you'll see persuasion, intimidation, deception all can be changed to intelligence, and then stealth, sleight of hand, and arcana can all be changed to charisma. This is to give your players more agency, like mapping skills onto the things they want to be good at in the ways they want to be good at them. It's just a fun little tweak. You don't have to do this, obviously. You don't have to do any of this. You could stop watching at any time. So who might tell you how to run your game? And then graduation gift. So whatever your conditions are for graduating, in my world, it's 5 years. If you graduate from the college, you get kind of a boon that sticks with you forever. So in the Silverquill College boon is that your magic becomes increasingly difficult to overcome in all of its forms. When casters attempt to counter or dispel magic of yours, they must succeed on a contested roll of their arcana versus your performance. So you get you have anyone who's trying to counterspell you has to confirm their counterspell. That's basically what it comes down. You have to re-roll. So it's like, aha, I counterspell you at 3rd level, and your spell's 4th level, and I roll, and I got a 14. It's like, cool, but now you have to actually roll another Arcana check that's higher than my performance check that I'm going to do. And if you can't beat that, then my spell still goes through. It makes your spells more durable. It's a very fun, it's a very strong mechanic. I probably never give this to an NPC, but I think it's really fun for players. I'm really all about making players as broken as possible. And then you get this additional boon, which is additionally you are capable of quickly generating scrolls 5th level or lower that require you to spend a corresponding spell slot and the 50, so like the normal 50 gold that you would do for transcribing. This takes 1 minute, which is very fast, and only a student or graduate of Strixhaven can use the scroll, but they are not required to roll to do so, even if they cannot normally cast the spell. So if you're a graduate of Strixhaven, the spell's not on your spell list, you can use this scroll without having to roll, which is pretty cool. You might say this seems really strong. I'm like, yeah, it does, but also if you're doing a full campaign where your party graduates, they should get some cool shit, in my humblest of opinions. I have a nice little Ravnica tie-in because my campaign is Ravnica based originally. Students from people from Ravnica going to Strixhaven. I have this fun little addendum here. I don't have hard rules for this because I think depending on the economy of your campaign, it's going to be very different. My economy, for example, is pretty wild. Players have access to a lot of money, like talking about in the millions of gold, because Ravnica is a very affluent place. Um, so there's this idea that you can take out a student loan, which might be too real for some of you, from the Orzhov Syndicate, and it's deeply predatory. It's not favorable at all. So if you find that fun for some reason, you can use that idea. I got some links down here uh, to the stuff that I've kind of talked about above in terms of spells, etc. Just some quick access stuff, including some easy links for first and second level verbal spells and fourth and fifth level verbal somatic spells from D&D Beyond. So you can just get those filters real quick. This is what the report card looks like if you're curious. And of course, if you're interested in like everything I just said, you can go to adaptivedungeons.com. That is what the site is here. That link will be down below. And if you want to support the creator, hey, I'm always glad for someone to buy me a cup of joe and keep the lights on here at Adaptive Dungeons. But hey, I'm just happy you showed up. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.